All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining the webinar 2 of Introduction to Bird Monitoring with Mushkegowuk Council Lands and Resources Department in collaboration with Planting Canada and Birds Canada. Mushkegowuk Council Lands and Resources thought it would be a good idea to bring us all together and connect people with bird migration occurring in breeding season. So I just wanted to have this opportunity to bring everybody together. My name is Hope Hill, and I am the Carbon Biodiversity Projects Coordinator with Mushkegowuk Council Lands and Resources. And I help support the monitoring initiatives we have occurring within the Mushkegowuk Council. And today I will actually be your speaker for this webinar. And this webinar is about monitoring with sound meter Mini 2 recorder devices specifically. So I will get started. All right, great. So as I mentioned before, this webinar is specific to sound meter Mini 2 recorder devices. The device I'll show you in real time here. Very small, easy to take places. But what this device is it is a audio recording device that is used to record birds and amphibians. So it can be taken out and deployed and left there to be able to record birds and amphibians. So today I'll give a little more introduction to why we're looking at these devices specifically. We'll look at how the device itself actually works and what to consider when looking at study design and setup for these devices. And then, of course, once we have all of this data, what do we do with this data, or how can we analyze it to be useful? And then, of course, we will have a question and answer period. So at that time, you will be free to raise your hand to ask questions and or type in the chat. And one thing I forgot to mention, if people could type in the chat who they are, where they're coming from or tuning in from, that would be appreciated, just so we know who we're reaching out to and also get to know one each other. Thanks. So the reason we're looking at the sound meter Mini 2 device specifically is Mushkegowuk Council Lands and Resources actually has these recorder devices to be able to provide and loan to Mushkegowuk nations for their own monitoring initiatives with birds and amphibians. And so we want to provide this webinar to be able to discuss them specifically and make people aware of them, but also to provide a resource for anyone who is looking to use these devices. So this is what the sound meter looks like externally. As you can see on the left, we have what is the microphone, and that's how it captures the audio to be collected for data. There is an option to put another microphone as well, and it's advantageous to have both microphones because when you are looking at the data, you can see which side the call came from, so it's useful to also to help interpret data. We also have mounting loops to be able to secure the device onto wherever you are putting it on, such as a tree. And we also have a padlock to help keep it closed. And you can't quite see it, but there's also a little loop at the bottom where you can put in a nail or screw as well for another way to keep it mounted. Additionally, there's a vent, which is important to help keep the climate control within the device so that it's working the most effectively as possible. Now, looking at the inside of the sound meter, at the bottom tray, we have what are the battery compartments. At the top is we have the control panel, which has various buttons that actually help you work with the sound meter and set settings. Additionally, we have the at the top a sound meter, slot for the SD card where you can put it in. And there's a little key above the control panel because there are little LED lights that let you know the status of different functions within the sound meter. And so it kind of helps you determine what those lights actually mean. And just to get a little bit of a close-up of what I'm talking about, here is the control panel. We have the on and off switch, and then beside it, we have what is called the pair button, and that's for actually connecting with the sound meter to work with it. And then we have what I was referring to, the LEDs. They are corresponding with the ones on the bottom in terms of indicating their status. They'll blink green or red to indicate status for Bluetooth recording or the SD card. And the little table at the top is what it will let you know what those mean. On the other side, we also have what is the function button, and that button is related to the little items at the top, diagnostic, loading, defaults, and format. And so with pressing the function button, you're able to go through those 4 different things to either run a diagnostics check, load files onto the sound meter from the SD card, or return the sound meter to default settings, or format the SD card by erasing it so it's clear and ready to take on data. To talk a little more about the SD card and batteries, in terms of the battery, you'll see here at the bottom that there are little red ribbons, and that is just to help with easy removal, because you can see at the end here of the 4 batteries that you're able to pull that tab and they just pop off. Warning, they do pop pretty high, so just watch out for that. And the sound meter can work with 4 batteries or 8 batteries. Obviously, this changes the life of the batteries for being a little shorter than 8. So that is also dependent on how long you want to have these devices deployed. So just something to consider. And then, as I mentioned, the SD card gets slotted into your top here. You click insert until you hear the click, and then of course you click again to take it out. And something I'll touch on a little later is how you'll be able to actually check the status of the batteries in SD card to help see how much data is being collected, or how full the SD card is, or what the battery life is looking like. In order to work with the sound meters, the one thing that is needed is the sound meter configuration app. And this app is something you can download onto your mobile device or iPad or any tablet. And it is needed in order to set up the recording schedule with the sound meter and the other settings of the device. Bluetooth is also needed for the mobile device or iPad or tablet in order for the sound meter to actually be able to communicate with the mobile device you're using. And just as a side note, for Android devices, version 8 or higher is required. For iOS devices, version 12 or higher is required. And at the bottom, I just have a little QR code to be able to download the sound meter configurator app if you want to. As I mentioned when we were looking at the control panel, there's this little button called pair. And this is what allows you to sync up to the configure app on your phone to be able to work with the sound meter. So if you were to download that app and open it up, the first thing you see is this recorders page, and it lists all the recorders that you've been in contact with or have paired with. In order to pair with a recorder, what you need to do is press this little pair button at the side of the control panel and wait until the Bluetooth LED light flashes green. And that means that the sound meter is ready to pair. It then will come up on here and it'll give you a pair option. These aren't available here, but a pair option would come up and you would click it to pair. Once you are paired, it will turn green to let you know that it is paired, and then you have these 3 different options that configure on parent status. These white recorders that you see are ones that you have paired with in the past, but have not paired with yet, and you can only pair with one at a time, but you're able to at least look at status if you would like to. That Bluetooth beacon is always making your ability to check on the sound meters if they are in range. And so once you do pair with the sound meter, a few pop-ups will come up where you will need to say yes to, and that is just so it can sync up the time and location settings for you with your phone. Another important screen is called the size screen, and that's what I was talking about, where you can check on different sizes such as microphone audio levels, SD card storage, temperature, battery status, what recording schedule the sound meter is currently on, and whether or not the firmware version is updated or not. If the firmware is out of date, alert up here that's red will be at the top of the screen, and you will have to update the firmware. However, the firmware needs to be obtained from the Wildlife Acoustics website, who are the manufacturers of the device, and an account is needed for that. So that is just something to consider. And this is just what the size screen looks like for reference. You can see it has all the details about the SD cards and about the schedule that's being run. For this one particularly, the right microphone is not attached, and you can see the battery is 100%. The next screen, which is a symbol you saw when looking at the recorder screen, is the configure screen. And this is where you are able to set the recording schedule for the sound meter. The sound meter actually does come with a few preset schedules. So for example, recording 24/7 for the first 3 minutes of each hour, for the first 5 minutes of every hour, from sunrise to sunset, and for 2 hours around sunrise and 2 hours around sunset. And through this, which I'll show you in a second, you can also determine the battery SD card life, which is very useful. For a general standard recording schedule that is pretty consistent to use is recording 5 minutes or 10 minutes of each hour pre-sunset to several hours after. However, this is for a general project. If there are specific projects or specific species that are being monitored using the sound meters, then there is a requirement to make recording adjustments based on the needs of your project. So that's just another thing to consider. On the left here is what the configuring screen looks like. You can see the schedule at the bottom where you can select a preset, or you can make your own schedule as you want. You can also make multiple schedules that are alternate or overlap each other. Additionally, as I was mentioning before, if you click the button besides the schedule where it says estimate battery and card life, then you're able to estimate that. And that is what is shown on the right. If it was deployed on May 22nd, and you're using the current card that's installed and the current batteries are installed. And then the only thing you do have to mention is whether you're using 4 batteries or 8 batteries to let it be able to make this estimate. It will then tell you that based on this information, the card is anticipated to be full in a whole year later, and the battery life is to be depleted in a few months in August. So this can help you figure out when you need to go get your saw meters or when to at least plan to go check on your saw meters to see if batteries or SD cards need to be changed. So it's a very useful tool. Another screen that you can access through the configure screen is the functions I was talking about on the control panels with formatting the SD card or setting factory settings or loading files. You're able to do that through the app as well if you wish to. So it's just another way to be able to do things. But you can also do it physically with the saw meter. Now, once you have that all set, there are a few things that you can look at for troubleshooting if something doesn't appear to be working. In terms of the exterior of the saw meter, make sure the enclosure latch is fully closed so that there's a tight seal and no rain or precipitation kicking in. Ensure that the microphones have that foam windshield, which is the little black foam around it. It's in good condition. Make sure that the vent, as shown earlier, is not covered or blocked so that environmental conditions within the device is good. And then if there's trouble with starting up the recorder, it's important to check the firmware is up to date. For batteries, it's important not to mix up the battery types. The battery types that we have to provide are lithium, and they are considered best in terms of battery life. However, you are able to use rechargeable batteries and alkaline batteries. However, the battery life is likely to be a little less. Make sure that the batteries are in proper orientation, so pluses with pluses, minus with minus, and make sure all batteries are new, fresh. Because if you have one battery that's been used, but you choose to use it, that can also deplete the battery life and shorten it. So just make sure all the batteries you're putting in are in the same condition and shape. In terms of the SD card, as I mentioned, there's the LED chart over the control panel. It'll tell you what the light for the SD card means, if there's errors and it's showing red. But you can also check to make sure that the SD card is not inserted upside down or backwards. And one thing that you could do is just reformat the SD card by erasing everything, even if it's empty, just to give it that quick look over. Next, I'm going to talk about study design and setup with the saw meters when you're looking at doing a project with the saw meters. So something to consider right off the bat when looking at study design is what is your research question or goal with the project and with using the saw meters? What data are you hoping to obtain or question you're looking to answer? Not just the time frame, for example, how long you want to have the saw meters deployed, how long they should be deployed based on your research question or goal. Then resources such as manpower, equipment, timing, available to work with the saw meters. Those are all important things to consider. And then lastly, deployment method. How are you going to deploy them? And what kind of way are you going to deploy them? So these are all things you want to kind of think about before deploying the saw meters. These are some types of designs that you can use to be able to deploy the saw meters. For example, stratified design. So that means you're deploying them based on classification or in categories. The example of that is the photo on the far left, where meters are deployed with deciduous forests, with coniferous forests, wetland, and walkland. So they're categorized kind of based on habitat. Next, you have a cluster design, which is, as it sounds, where you concentrate all the centimeters within a smaller area to cover the whole area. Maybe you're really interested in one localized area. So that's one way of doing it, to make sure you cover the whole area. The next is a transect design. So that's putting them in a line or pathway. Your example in the photo here is a line coming from the road. Maybe you want to see how things change as the distance grows farther away from the road. So that's another example. And then lastly, there's a grid design, which is you place a grid pretty much over a whole area, and you mark the middle of each grid square to indicate where you would like to place the sound meter. And this helps if you want to cover a wide area and want to be able to make sure you have effective spread over the area that you're looking at. Additionally, if it's a pilot project or you just really want to know what's out there, you can put them anywhere you think would be as useful as you. And as you work with the project, you can focus more in on different designs as well, if you would like. In terms of setup, there's other equipment you're going to need. Of course, the batteries, the SD card. You need some sort of security measure, like a lock table, to hopefully prevent tempering or the meter falling. An SD card reader is useful, especially for when the firmware needs to be updated or transferring data from the sound meter to your laptop or computer. And then additionally, another thing that's useful is labels. So putting identification numbers associated with the different devices, the different SD cards, to track where things are going, what is with what, really helps to know. Another thing that is useful for setup is having an information tag that you can put along with the sound meter when you deploy it. Just providing a little information of what the device is, why it's there, so that if people do come find it, that they understand why it's being deployed and to hopefully not tamper with it. But also they may want to get to know the product or know more information, so it can help with exposure. Lastly, it could also help, say the sound meter did get knocked down and lost and someone came upon it, then it's one way that can hopefully have the sound meter returned back to you. As I mentioned before, with other equipment, labels are really good, and this can help with tracking. For example, it's important with actually deploying, you have some sort of field data sheet where you're able to put all this information down of where you deployed it, which device you deployed, what it was like when you deployed it. Additionally, as I mentioned, it's a good idea to go out and check on your sound meter every once in a while. So that in that case, you can have some sort of maintenance visit sheet to have that information down. And then with the labels, you can also make some sort of tracking spreadsheet, as the one I had depicted here, showing what sound meters with what, the serial number, what cable lock was used with it, the last firmware version on it, when it was last updated, the SD card with it. And then, of course, this can also have many other fields, such as location, GPS. So it's really up to you what you would like to track as well. So for this webinar specifically, we're looking at birds, but also the sound meter can be used for amphibians. These are just some site selection that you can use or consider if you would like. Wetland, peatland to forest transitional areas, forest opening, disturbed area or clearings, area of known presence or historical presence, which can be used to confirm presence or establish if things are still present, but maybe a little more elusive. or known gathering places for migrating or breeding birds to help see what is around. Additionally, dense forests along river and lakes and riparian zones, shoreline and shrub and early successional habitats. Not all bird species use the same habitat, as you can see, I know. So it's really advantageous to look at different habitat types to cover different species. Or if we're looking at a specific species, understand its habitat to know where to put the song meters. In terms of actually deploying the sound meter, it's important to select a tree narrow than the recorder, and that's because their microphones will then be in open space and be able to collect sounds and noises more effectively. The ideal height to place the sound meter is 1 to 1.5 meters above ground. And it's important that there's not a lot of clutter or other trees around it to help that flow of sound get to the microphone. So if possible, at least 1.5 meters away from trees, shrubs, or water bodies. Also, it's important that any like shrub or branches on that tree that are around the sound meter, important to make sure they're trimmed to know that they're not interfering. Also, as seasons change, growth can occur, so you're at least helping slow that down a little bit. Also, if possible, deploy 15 to 20 meters from a road so that they're not easily detected. However, as mentioned, that's where the information tag can come in handy if someone does come upon it. It's important to have the recorder placed facing north, and that's just to help prevent interference from the sun. And then, of course, make sure that the recorder is secured in some way by cable lock or screws or ties. And then once they're all set, open and switch on your recorder, check the settings to make sure the time and location is correct and that the recording schedule you want is actually on the sound. And as I mentioned before, it is ideal to deploy in a variety of habitats. In terms of making a field data sheet, it's important to have who deployed it, where it's deployed, weather conditions. It's useful to know what it's like. Make sure that the direction of the recorder is north. Of course, the deployment date and time. It's also important to understand the surroundings of where the devices deployed, so have some sort of comments to describe the habitat that it's placed in, and then any other comments as well that you want to place, such as maybe you saw wildlife or other interesting things, or it may have been a tricky way to get to where you want to deploy a sound meter, so just letting people know about hazards if you want. And then another standard rule is to take photos of the device that's deployed. Typically, you do a northeast southwest shot of the device, a face-on shot, and then of the overall habitat view of the device. And this is just to help know where the sound meter is deployed, but also can help find the sound meter if you go out looking for it and something's not lining up with the GPS. It just kind of helps give you that visual as well. As I mentioned, maintenance visits are important to do to check on the sound meter to make sure that there's no damage and that it is in proper working function. To trim and remove the overrest if there has been growth since you last seen it. Check if the batteries are full or the batteries are depleted. If the SD card is full, you can make those changes as well if you're looking to still have the sound meter deployed for longer. And then make sure you are able to obtain this SD card to be able to take back for analysis. And then, of course, having some sort of maintenance sheet to fill out to know that maintenance visit happened and to have identification that if the SD card or batteries were changed. In terms of data management, it's important to download the data on an external drive or server or separate so that you can track where the data is going. It's also important to organize it a little bit, and it can be categorized by the device unit itself or the site if you're doing the project based on site. So that's where, again, the identification labels can come in handy as well. And then it's important to make sure that the SD card data is transferred to the external device before erasing it, because the SD cards can be reused. So just make sure and double check that the data has been transferred in one way or another before erasing. All right, so now you collected data, how can you analyze and what can you do with it? So that's what I'm just going to talk about a little bit right now. So first, I just want to give a little background of how calls are identified. So the shape of the total acoustic signal, so the call or sound detected by your microphone, is transferred into what is called a spectrogram. And a spectrogram is a visual representation of a sound, or in this case, the call. The visual representation in a spectrogram shows a specific pattern of the call. And so patterns are specific to the calls of each species. And so that's how you're able to distinguish between species using spectrogram software. So in this case, here's an example of a spectrogram. This is the white-throated sparrow call, and you can see the dark dashes are its call and how they change on frequency. At the end of the call, I can also show you the live version of this, but just wanted to give you a snippet. So some spectrogram software you can use, Wildlife Acoustics, which is the manufacturer of the sub-meter Mini-2 device, has their own called Kaleidoscope. They have two versions: the light, which allows you to listen, view, and label recordings, which is free, or there's a pro version, which includes what the light version has, but has additional announced features, and it is a paid subscription as well. So these allow you to look at the spectrograms of your data, but not automatically identify calls. So this can help us view and organize data. So it can be used for project and individual use as well. Another option is FileTrax, which is an online platform for managing, storing, processing, and sharing data. They ask you to set up an organizational account to be able to use it and house the data online. There is the ability to process the recordings with multiple methods and users when working with FileTrax, but that is specific to you and something that you have to connect with them about. For those who do coding with analysis, they also have a wild RTrax package available to use as well. So this is more of a project use as opposed to individual being able to use it themselves. Another software that can be used is called BirdNet, and it is a research platform that provides the ability to automatically identify bird calls and sounds. So there's a website version and an app version where through that app you can record in live time, and it will, through analysis, give you the probability of what bird you just heard immediately, or you can upload the recording through the website to use. And currently they have been able to have a library to identify around 3,000 of the world's most common species. So that's a pretty good start. And so this can be used on a project basis within an organizational style or individual use. One way is you can hold up the app to be able to listen to the recordings you have, and that's one way you can manually look at identifying the bird in your data. And this is just a little diagram to show you how it works. The recording goes through, and a spectrogram is made, and then through the BirdNet algorithm, they pop up some species probability, and through the use of eBird, they're able to pinpoint a more specific probability of which species it is, and it will give you that based on your analysis, the probability of which bird the call is coming from. Another option is Merlin app, which a lot of you may have heard of, and this is another way you're able to identify birds by sound or photo, or even learn about birds. You have the option of trying to identify bird by sound, by photo, or you can do a step-by-step where it just asks you various questions to help narrow it down. There's also lists of birds where you can go and learn about them, hear their calls, and understand their range of when they're migrating, breeding, non-breeding, they're year-round. So it's a great learning tool to learn about birds, and also work on some bird identification as well. So this is more of an individual use tool. The last tool I want to talk about is Dendrosa, which is an online platform where it gives you various spectrograms of bird species. You're able to listen to many different ones, and you can also look at photos. You can also narrow down the list to a more specific region, and you can also do you can do quizzes on this as well. So you can test your bird identification knowledge, or you can use it as a tool to improve your bird identification. So again, this is a more individualized tool. All right, so now you have this data, you were able to identify the bird calls. What can you use the data for? So these are just some examples you can do. The species occurrence, which is counting how many times the species was recorded over a certain amount of time, by season, by the whole monitoring period, 100 days, whatever you are interested in. Species richness, which is counting how many different species are caught, recorded over a certain amount of time. One thing you can look into a little bit is species abundant, which is looking at the number of individual species and individuals of species within a set area. However, with the sound meter, it's really hard to distinguish individual calls from species within species, and you might be hearing the same bird over and over again. So that's something to look at within cautious about, but may be able to at least give you an idea of what abundance looks like. Another way is you can simply have stats tables. You can look at a specific sound meter and have all its data, such as coordinates, start date, end date, number of days recorded, recordings captured, number of recordings that were bird species, numbers that weren't, and number of species tagged. So you can look at a broad scale of what the data you collected looks like. And you can also break that down by species stats table and looking at individual species if you want. So those are just some few options. So with that, that is the end of my presentation. I thank you for listening and hope you learned a lot. And I will end the presentation to see if there's any questions. Thank you.
Well, is it helpful if I read out some questions to you, or do you want to just scan through?
Might be helpful if you just read them out. I won't be able to go to the top of the chat.
Sure, yeah. I'll scan through for you. So one of the early questions was if there's a specific type of batteries that's preferred, alkaline or lithium kind of options.
So lithium has been considered the best because of its life. It has a pretty good life of battery and also able to restrain a wider temperature range. However, the sun meter is able to use just standard alkaline as well, or rechargeable batteries. So this really depends on what you have available for resources or what are able to get as well. So, and that can also be compensated with just going out and doing more maintenance checks as well to replenish batteries as needed.
Katrina asked, how often do you do maintenance visits?
So that's where the estimate battery life and SD card life can come in handy. In general, sound meters are meant to be left out for long periods of time. So you don't have to check them like every week or every day, but do it in a way of a schedule that works for you. And I would use the estimated battery life and card life as a way to work back from to like, okay, maybe halfway through when I deployed it and when that battery life or SD card life is going to deplete, start halfway, maybe do quarters between that time. That's where I would use. And of course, if you use 8 battery versus 4 batteries, then it's a longer time between as well.
Russ commented after that and said that their group uses long periods and just does maintenance on them at the end. So yeah, if the battery life says it'll make it months past when you are able to go pick them up, then you can do all that maintenance out in the field. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Lucas asked about spectrogram software being able to distinguish between red-eyed vireo and Philadelphia vireo and other really similar species.
So that's a little outside my range of knowledge, but we do have these lovely experts on what they call as well from Birds Canada, Plenty Canada, and ECCC. So I don't know if any of them are able to answer that question a little better than I am.
I don't know if Russ wants to speak up too. He helped answer the question in the chat that the recognizers are getting there, but human observers are still the best.
Yeah, so if you want to be sure you're not missing any species or misidentifying ones, even humans are going to make mistakes. But the auto recognizers they're going to make probably more mistakes than humans are going to be, like if they're expert bird types. And counts and IDs can be really difficult if it's a morning songbird chorus. Even humans really struggle with that, but the auto recognizers really don't do a very good job yet at all. That's a big challenge for the recognizers. So depends on how precise data needs you have. If it's pretty precise, you don't want too many mistakes, then usually finding bird experts to interpret your recordings is a good way to go. And the Two-Eyed Seeing Project can help with that, and we can help a little bit too if it comes to that. Thanks.
Thank you, Russ.
Jackson asked a question about whether it's possible to use data gathered from recording devices to prove to developers and governing bodies that certain habitats ought to be protected.
Yeah, so that's definitely one thing you can use for any watering project and that is related to your research goal or question. So if that is to identify a habitat that is needed for protection or of significance important and to showcase that to others, then that will lead to how you set up your project. But yeah, that's definitely one thing that data can be used for to show others the importance of that area or species.
I think it's a good reminder that having that really high quality GPS data for where the ARU was and making sure you have the time data well recorded makes that data so much more valuable. And if you can say there was a certain species at this place, then yeah, it increases the value of the data quite a bit. Jacqueline asked about eDNA contributing with less risks, and she's noticed other First Nations using that method to monitor water, soil, and also asked whether this will be used for the Marine Conservation Project.
Yeah, in terms of the eDNA, I think that's something we are thinking of and looking into. Don't have that right now, but of course take that as feedback for other monitoring initiatives as well. So definitely can take that back and look into it further from you, Jackie. Yeah, of course. All the monitoring initiatives will be used to help with baseline data and for conservation. And so those overlap with the National Marine Conservation Area and the Mushkegowuk Conservation. So they tie in together, but it's not directly just for those specific initiatives. It's for everything.
Those are all the questions, and then a lot of comments on the great presentation, Hope. So one more. Does the software mentioned in this webinar work with other bird song meters, or are these specific to the mini version?
In terms of the kaleidoscope, so any device made by the Wildlife Acoustic, which has other sound meters, like a sound meter 4, and that's the only one I can think of off the top of my head, but I know they have quite a few. Those can be used for the kaleidoscope. I'm not sure for others outside of their products, but in terms of the other software side, I mentioned, yeah, as long as the formats are readable by the software, I would say yes. And Russ, you want to mention something?
Yeah, thank you. One thing that's maybe not obvious at the beginning for acoustic stuff, and we made mistakes on this too in the past, is that if getting counts of the number of individuals of a species are important for you, then it's pretty important to have 2 microphones, because they're just like humans. If you hear a bird singing this way and territorial, another territorial male singing this way, you got to have 2 ears to distinguish the 2 individuals. So if you do need to have good count information, make sure you have 2 microphones. Make sure they're mounted on the outside. There's a few models where the microphones are inside the unit and they just don't hear as much. So again, it depends on what your questions are. That's something that's maybe not obvious right to begin. Thanks.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And yeah, just plugging for next week's webinar, where they'll be talking about the Ontario Bird Breeding Atlas and other bird surveys. Point counts is something they'll also discuss as well. So stay tuned for that to learn more as well. So I don't know if we have any other questions. But I want to say thank you to Graham from Birds Canada, who has been putting in links for me in the chat, helping me with that. And also wanted to say thank you to Birds Canada, Plenty Canada, and E-Triple-C for joining us as well to provide some more information and be able to be here and help us out. And of course, I would like to thank everybody who joined in on the webinar today to listen to my presentation, and we'll be putting our contact information in the chat as well, if you would like to reach out. Another thing I'll mention is, I mentioned this at the beginning, but we do have some Meter Mini 2 devices for Mushkegowuk Council nations to be able to provide loans. So if that's something you're interested in, feel free to reach out to me. We also have resources that we have developed that we are happy to share as well if anyone's interested. So yeah, feel free to reach out. And that'll be the end of this webinar. I'll just quickly enter my info into chat, but I hope everybody has a great day. Thank you.
Thank Hope.
Yeah, thank you, Hope. Take care.
Take care, everybody.
Great job, Hope. Thank you.
Yeah, that was
Thanks.
really good. So thank you. And I think even if people have different types or it's a lot of information to process, like it gives the overview, and for people who've never opened one up to see what they look like inside and okay, can I use this bat? I think that's all really helpful, and what are all the
Yeah.
tools?